So at this point in my story, I am basically still in prison. I just got granted parole. I have a date of 6 months away, and I start dealing with the realization of the difficulties that now lie ahead. So before I start talking about that, I do want to go back a little bit and just make clear to everyone who's watching this um, just how miraculous it really was, and what was actually involved for me to be able to get out of the predicament that I was in. It didn't require one miracle, but it required multiple miracles, multiple. And the truth of the matter is that everybody around me, including attorneys, family, friends, prisoners, everybody around me told me I was wrong and I was crazy for going to trial, for being adamant on not accepting any deal. Even judges. I even had a judge tell me that. I had a prosecutor come into the holding cell in one of the places and tell me, I've never in my life entered a holding cell to talk to a defendant, but I'm here to tell you, take a deal. Take the deal because you're going to lose your life over this. So I just want to make that point again to go back and further solidify how much of a role God played in this whole thing for me, because that's the real answer as to why I was able to move forward in confidence and in opposition of reality and logic and the opinions of everybody around me. So it was actually, again, it was just a miracle for me. So I believe that God protected me and God saved me from that life, and I'm eternally grateful. I'm humbled by it because, the man you're looking at now, listening to, is should have been one of those lost souls. There's so many lost souls in the prison system. People that have just, it's very sad for me even to think back and of the people that I've befriended and have gotten close to over the years that will never ever come out. A lot of them that were, similar in age to me, that have parole eligibility dates of 25, 30 years from now. So I know what that reality is, and having been there and experienced that, and just to think that that was me, and I had brought it upon myself for whatever reason, circumstance played a part. Yeah, my upbringing played a part. Yes, but in the end, I'm responsible for my actions, and so I was prepared to die in prison. I mean, one way or the other, whether being killed or whether dying of old age, which I doubt. But it was a very, very difficult thing for me not to take any plea offer. Very difficult. I was gambling with my life, and I did so because, again, it's going to sound crazy to a lot, but God told me that. God told me. I heard it come to me when I was on my knees in prayer, begging for the answer. What do I do? What do I do? And the answer came to me. Don't take any deal. I'll get you out of this. You will come out of this. And not only will you come out of this, but you'll come out of this and do great things in life and have everything you never thought you could have. And so I'm always grateful for that. And I'm never going to deny what the truth is. It's unfortunate that a lot of people have, miraculous things happen to them, and they don't like to speak about it. And, they're not vocal about it just because they understand how it's going to be perceived. I'm not one of those people. I don't give a fuck how it's perceived by you or by anybody out there. I want people to know the truth. As I said in the initial intro to this whole series, I'm doing this for my family, for my children, to one day look back and be able to have record and have document of what the real truth was from my own words, from me. And this is the truth. And I want them to know that God saved me. God saved me and took me out of there. And many things that happened to me in life further confirm and solidify my belief. It's not a belief. It's a knowledge. There's a very big difference in that. I've often heard people say, about the argument whether God does or doesn't exist. They say, how is it that God can exist if there are people who go to church for decades? They go to church for decades and they're praying and praying for the same thing, and their prayers are never answered. And my answer to that is because an absolute requirement is that you know for certain. You have to believe to the point that you are 100% in your belief with anything in life. If you are not, If you doubt, then you can pray all you want, and it will not happen. I entrusted my life into God, and I believed. I believed, and I gambled everything on that belief. And that belief then transitioned into my knowing and no longer believing. I know for certain what happened to me. Nothing is going to change that. Nothing. No words another man will speak to me will ever create doubt in my mind as to what actually happened. So I just wanted to get that out of the way so everyone understands, the severity of the situation I was in and the miracles that took place. So back to the story now. I'm in prison, and I start thinking about what I'm gonna do now. What am I gonna do? I just fought this long battle that took so much out of me for years in trying to stay out of prison, trying to get out of a cage. And now, I was hit with this truth that I'm out. It happened. The miracle happened. God took me out. He answered my prayers, and He made a way for me. But what am I going to do when I go home? What do I do? For all that time, I had the perfect excuse for failing in life or for not achieving great things in life, in that I was in prison. So as long as you're a prisoner, you don't have. Nobody can ever criticize. Nobody can have expectation of you. But once you're free, you then now have to take care of yourself again. You have to provide for yourself, and you have to make a way for yourself. And I was very, very afraid of that because of the current laws in place that allow for companies to discriminate against ex-convicts, people who are felons. You're basically disqualified and blackballed from any gainful employment. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was very reluctant to take parole. I don't like taking programs. I don't like taking parole, any kind of supervision. For me, I would prefer just stay the fuck in prison. Stay the fuck where I am. Let me finish this and max out and then go home. But again, I took the parole because it was fair and the right thing to do for those that were supporting me from the outside. It's not fair for me to tell them that I don't want to take parole because parole is going to be a pain in the ass, and I don't like being told what to do, and I prefer to just stay in the cage and max out. I know what it is here, and I don't want to go into something unknown to me. But I took the parole, and there was a lot of anxiety building up in me as that date came, that release date, and I was also very concerned because something people may not be aware of is that though you were charged, sentenced, and incarcerated to a term of prison within a state, there still lies the possibility that the federal government can charge you for the crimes. So it's not considered double jeopardy because it's a different thing. It's a federal and it's a state thing. So I was very concerned all the way up until walking out of the prison that I could have got hit with a federal indictment, especially for some guns. And so I was very nervous about that as well. So there were a ton of things going on in my mind, but the day became closer and closer, and I also was a little bit troubled by another realization that all the people I know, anyone I would call a friend, they're here, they're in these places. I don't have anybody else, I don't have anybody out there that I could be friends with. There was always people that thought that would love to have been friends with me, but the reality was we were not friends because we had very little common ground. I couldn't relate to them. They couldn't relate to me. So my friends were the people who came from the same world as me because we understood each other. And there were things that didn't have to be said all the time because they just knew. And that saddened me. Not only that, but of course the fact that they're staying and I'm going. Here I am, in this place where everybody's staying behind, and these are people that I spent a lot of time with, and so that bothered me also a little bit. But my day came, and I was released. I was released from prison, and it was just unbelievable feeling. I don't even know what to feel. I wish I could tell you that it was full of joy and the best moment of my life. Like people always say, to come out of prison, I took a deep breath and everything was great. That really wasn't the case for me. That wasn't the case. I came out and I was scared to death. I was terrified. of what the future held for me now. What do I do? All my life I lived in a way that was reckless, and I never believed I would live. I never believed I'd make it to that age. I never believed I'd make it to this age. So here I am. But because of that recklessness, I had basically put myself in a position where I was fucked. I was fucked in life. I didn't know anything about how to start building a legitimate life as a regular citizen, because I had been my mind had been so warped by such a long period of time in my life that I was exposed to that kind of thing. It's very difficult. And I was also nervous about how I'm going to interact with people. How am I going to interact with people after coming out of this shit? You're coming out of a jungle. You're coming out of a place where you cannot live the same way that you do in a free society. In a free society, you're protected in a lot of ways. Whereas in prison, there's very difficult realities to face there. You can be victimized very fucking easily. So there were a lot of times in my life from a very young age that I was forced to become something that I never wanted to be. But I didn't have the choice. I didn't have the option to choose. In the last video, you heard me talk about one of the first significant things that happened when I was locked in that cell with that guy fighting. At that point, I was finally strong enough in other senses, outside of the physical sense, that I could stop and I could control. I could take control of it. But before that, I couldn't. I had no choice. I was just like an animal. You put an animal in a predicament, and that animal, as reluctant as he may be to fight, as reluctant as he may be to attack, if you keep attacking him and keep fucking with him, he's going to have a choice to make. He's going to either die as a result, or he's going to fucking kill. He's going to attack back and become violent. And so it's a sad thing for me to think that, so many of us, not just me, had to become something that we didn't necessarily want in life. And the flip side to that is, how do you unbecome something? How do you unbecome who you've been for so long? How do you stop applying the rules that are true in prison on the streets? How do you change it all? And so I was concerned about that, about especially the interaction part, about what was going to happen, in the streets, what was going to happen with me in environments where I was packed and there was a lot of people, and would I be nervous because I wasn't used to it. I hadn't been around females in years, so there was a lot of things that were going through my mind. But I come out and I was granted parole. And it was a very, very difficult thing because the parole officer I had was a piece of shit. And he made it very clear from his first day, the prison was like 3 hours from where I was getting paroled to. And I had to report to parole that same day. So by the time I got released from prison, it was about noon. And by the time I got up there, it was about 3 o'clock. Now, you could imagine, it's my first day home. I'm thinking I'm going to go in and just report and know what's going on and leave. But rather than that, this fucking guy made me sit there for 7 hours, knowing that my ride was outside, waiting. 7 hours I sat there. No fucking excuse, no reason, no justification for the delay. Just like, fuck you, basically. Just tempting me, testing me, hoping I'm going to flip the fuck out and say the wrong thing and then they'll lock me right back up. So I didn't like the parole from the beginning. I had a curfew. It was 9 o'clock, and they told me right away, if we call you at 9:01 and you don't answer, and you're in the shower, we're coming to lock you up. We don't give a fuck. And they used to just show up at my house randomly. They can show up at 2 in the morning and ring the doorbell, and they're allowed to come in legally, and it was just a fucking nightmare. In addition to that, the only employment that I was able to gain was back in the Diamond District in Manhattan. And these fuckers told me I'm not allowed to leave the state. So they prevented me from gaining the employment that was available to me, while at the same time telling me that I'm forced to pay all these fines that I owe. They hit me with a bunch of different fines, including in my sentence. And that if I don't pay those, I go back to prison. So what the fuck am I supposed to do? I have an opportunity to work miraculously. You're not allowing me to take it. You then tell me I have to pay all this money, which I have no way to get, or I'm going back to prison. And so I was in a very, very difficult predicament, and time passed. I was very antisocial when I came out of prison. I didn't go out. I just, stayed home and stayed to myself. And time passed, and as time passed, I slowly started getting back into the swing of things, the normal life, moving about in the free world. And so the transition was difficult, to say the least.